The Bear Essentials podcast gives older bears a place to gather for real talk regarding topics and issues that they can relate to. Here at The Bear Essentials, we aren't just having conversations. We are looking to provide actionable intelligence through real-life experience and expertise of our guests. Our mission is to build a strong community that elevates and motivates people to go beyond their limiting beliefs by helping them realize that getting older is not an excuse to hibernate on their goals, but a reason to work harder.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Charles Wallace. Today's guest is Eric Brooker. On this episode, we discuss his podcast, Counsel Culture, and his yet-to-be-released book called You Are Enough. This conversation today was extremely real and authentic for me. We talked about leadership, what it means to be a leader, how things in our life will impact the way we lead, how being a leader isn't necessarily just the way you interact when the lights are shining bright. It's more about also when no one's looking. How do you treat others? There's a lot of valuable information here. And like I said, Eric is extremely authentic, and we do get into his book, You Are Enough. This is what I like and what I think is beneficial to you, the audience. Everything isn't perfect. Everything isn't what social media portrays it to be. And here on the Bear Essentials, what I am trying to do is have real conversations to hopefully let everyone know all of our lives are not perfect. We all are dealing with something. And again, besides the tips on leadership, this is just a great story. And Eric he's a great person. And I will say it, he's one of those people who inspires us to be better people. So with that being said, let's jump on into my interview with Eric Brooker. Hey, good morning, Eric. Welcome to the show. I really appreciate you joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I can't wait to get into some of these topics. I think it's going to be really interesting and valuable for the audience. Would you mind giving a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah. So again, the name's Eric Brooker. My wife and I live here in St. Paul, Minnesota. We have 7 kids that range from 21 to 2. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about them a little bit later. I'm in the tech space, so I'm responsible for mergers and acquisitions for a technology company. And I've been in the industry for about 20 years, we're coming up on 2 years. Next month will be 2 years that I started a podcast focused all around culture and leadership. We've had some great guests from the CEO of Chipotle to the founder of Reebok to a buddy of mine that works at a church up the road.
That is exactly why I was interested in having you on the show, Eric. I've seen what you've done in your career, which I thought was amazing. I've seen what you're doing away from your career, which I think is you're pivoting from your career to that and doing some great things. So I wanted to give you definitely an opportunity to speak to my audience, introduce yourself to my audience, and hopefully they will start following you also because you have things that are definitely worth sharing. One of the things I really want to talk about with you that I'm really into and I'm always interested in learning myself is about leadership. And Eric, I think you would agree with this. I think when we look on LinkedIn and all types of social media, it seems like it's a catchphrase lately. Everyone is calling themselves a leadership expert.
Yep.
And I start to look around and I go, damn, with so many leaders, I don't know if there's any followers left, right? Like, so from you, a couple things. What does it mean to be a leader? And what makes you a leadership expert?
Well, I'll answer the latter one first. I get a little tired of social media in its entirety, in part because very seldom are people vulnerable and real with one another. And I've talked about this on my show in the past, that while you're scrolling LinkedIn today or Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or whatever your thing is, everybody's got that white picket fence around the house. a happy marriage. They've got 2.5 kids. They've got the beautiful dog, the whole 9 yards. The reality of it is as you're scrolling through LinkedIn or some other form of social media today, someone's going through a divorce, someone's an alcoholic, someone's struggling with some form of addiction, they're filing bankruptcy. Those are the things that we opt not to talk about. And I think we're going to get into that a little bit later. So I believe that social media, in fact, I'm not even going to say I believe, social media is a falsehood in and of itself, including this idea that we're all leaders or leadership experts, or the phrase that I most like is self-given titles of thought leader. I'll be the first to tell you that I strongly believe that you do not give that title yourself to yourself. You don't put that title on LinkedIn. You become a leader. You become a thought leader when other people call you that. And again, it doesn't go on your LinkedIn profile. You don't go put it on a business card and say, hey, everybody, I'm a thought leader. I've been hosting a podcast for 2 years, all about leadership and culture. And I was really fortunate to I was asked of someone a number of months ago to join their podcast. They said, well, Eric, you're the expert. I said, well, what makes me the expert? And they said, Eric, you've had a podcast for 2 years. You've talked to all sorts of leaders. You've got great insight. And that's where I paused. I said, I might have great insight. I'm not an expert. A leader is someone that wants to continue to learn and grow in their expertise. A leader is someone that people naturally want to follow. A leader is someone that when you look up, you're in the midst of a project and realized, man, Charles asked me a question about that, and somehow I'm now mid-project. A leader is someone that you naturally find sort of attractive and you want to help, you want to serve. But a leader is also someone that serves you. And I think that's often forgotten. I want to say we were talking about this yesterday. I don't remember the context, but it's someone that you're sort of naturally drawn to, but it's not someone that you report to. I say often that anyone in an organization, anyone from the CEO to the janitor can be a leader, but culture is contagious. So anyone in a business, if you're listening to this and saying, well, I can't be a leader, I don't have any direct reports, you absolutely can be a leader. It's how you act at home. It's how you act at church. It's how you act in the office.
And Eric, again, what comes through to me about you, and I just want to give you this compliment, it's authenticity. And I like what you touched on, because one of the things that I'm trying to do, and it is people like you that I'm looking to now to be role models, so to speak. I want to paint a picture of myself of the good and the bad, because I think the bad sometimes for all of us can even be more powerful and help people more than the good, right? And as far as being a leader or an expert, I've come to the conclusion now that I'm absolutely an expert in nothing and a student of everything.
I love it.
And that's the way I'm approaching this podcast and LinkedIn and social media and all of it. And again, people like you make me feel that way, and it makes me want to pursue it. Hang tight, everyone. We'll be right back after a word from NGBN TV.
Hey, Charles, I just wanted to welcome you and all the Bear Essential listeners and watchers to NGBN.TV. My name is Chris Rubio, and I'm the host of The Rubio Method. We are a show about men's mental health that comes out every other Wednesday. Our latest episode just came out today, June 22nd. Then we'll have one in another 2 weeks. We already have 9 episodes out with myself and my co-host, Nick Monahan. We navigate the zone of men turning into middle age and going through health crises, whether it's mental, physical, and we have a good time while doing it. We tell a lot of funny stories. We have great interviews and guests, and it's just an all-around good time for about a half an hour to 45 minutes. So make sure you check out The Rubio Method as well on NGBN.TV, YouTube, Spotify, Google, and Amazon podcasts. And once again, from The Rubio Method to the Bear Essentials, welcome to NGBN.TV.
The other thing you touched on, and I just want to add this for the audience, Eric is being somewhat modest, in my opinion, because I'll say it, Eric's career, I do believe Eric is an expert when it comes to leadership, someone that I would look to learn from in my professional role. You mentioned, though, and I want to get into this, how does that translate? Because I think a lot of us, we think of leadership, it's always outside of our professional role. But I think more importantly, how do we lead our families, our friends? What does that mean to you, and how do you pursue that?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the kind words. I'm really grateful for the opportunity that I've had professionally. I'm super grateful for the opportunity I've had with the podcast. It's been an incredible journey for me. Leadership, I think, like integrity, is how you act when nobody is looking. And I think and maybe I didn't do a great job. It's not just the way you act at work. It's not just the way you act at home. It's the way you interact with people. And that includes the barista at the local coffee shop, the person bagging your groceries. There is an air about a person that is a genuine leader. And all of you listening, I can think of someone. I know, Charles, you can think of someone. Everyone listening can think of someone that they think is a good leader. And we know inherently that they treat the barista at a coffee shop the same way that they treat us, because we are no different. They'll hold the door for the custodian, the janitor, whomever, because we're all equal. We just serve in different ways. And I think it's really important for us as either leaders or aspiring leaders to remember that we have to be present in the moment. And we all know what I'm about to say, and some of us, myself included, struggle with regularity. But start by putting the phone down. You're not going to be present in a conversation with a coworker, a boss. You're not going to be present with the barista at a coffee shop or your children if your phone is in your hands. It is eye-opening to me. And again, I struggle with this. So I'm pointing more fingers back towards me than I am maybe towards anybody else. But when you put your phone down and you realize what's around you, there's beauty all around us. And I think oftentimes we miss it because we're on the go all the time. But to be present in the moment is an opportunity to lead. 3 years ago, again, my wife and I have 7 kids that range from 21 to 2. And I realized a few years ago that my son, now 16, is going to be driving. I have an obligation. This is a very small opportunity to be a leader. But, if I'm texting and driving while he's in the car, what am I teaching him? I'm teaching him to text and drive. And I realized at that point that I have an obligation to lead him, but it starts by leading by example. It's not because I direct really, really well, or a particular leader directs really, really well. It's because there's in fact, follow this guy, Nate Randall. Nate Randall is an absolutely incredible leader. He's the CEO of a company. They talk about safe tech for kids. The company's called Gab Wireless. Nate is an absolute leader in everything that he does. And it's eerily apparent in the way he talks on social media, on the way people talk about him on social media, and just my brief interaction having him as a guest, because he is here to lead by example, not to direct people. Hey, go do this, go do that, go do the other thing. That's not a leader. Someone that leads is willing to get in the field and get dirty with you.
Yeah. And as you just went through that, I was mentally checking the boxes in my head of, crap, I do that. Crap.
We all do.
That. Damn, he's so right. And it's almost like you just don't even realize it anymore.
Yep.
So Eric, I can tell it comes off. Where did the passion for leadership come from?
It's a funny story. So the pandemic hit, and I was trying to find some things to keep occupied, for transparency purposes. And I was trying to recognize, what am I excited about? What am I passionate about? And I had just come off of, and I'm not going to name names, but I had recently come off of a really bad job. And what I recognized in that job is the company had bad leaders and they had a terrible culture. But when I interviewed for the job, you've got your logo right behind you. Oftentimes we walk into a Target or a Walmart. They tout themselves as, you see all the things that are important to them on a wall. You go to your office, there's vinyl lettering of all the things that we as a company stand for. They said all the right things in the interview. They had all the right things written on the wall. They had Taco Truck Tuesday and coffee and, all the things that made it feel like this is going to be a really great environment. And I got there and the rose-colored glasses came off a couple months in, and I realized, oh my gosh, I have made a miserable mistake. And so the passion was there from that bad experience. I was there for a few years. I tried to fix certain things. I tried to address them, and I couldn't fix them. And I went on this mission to figure out how not to make the same mistake again, how to find an organization when I take my next job that truly has good leaders, truly has good leadership characteristics, and has a great culture. And so I went on this journey to find where I went wrong, and hopefully along the way help others not make the same mistake that I did. And again, when you have an opportunity to talk to cancer survivors, folks that are bound to a wheelchair, folks that have burned themselves on 100% of their body, all the way to the founder of like an Anytime Fitness. Why not keep that going? These guys are leading me and directing me and giving me sound advice and my audience at every turn. And so it's been a great journey for me, but the passion started from that really horrible experience at a workplace.
And again, back to that, right? It seems like, and I hate to say it, but it's our mistakes, it's the bad things sometimes that they resonate and they become our friend, basically, our teachers. So Eric, the other thing I wanted to really get into today, and this is where I thought, again, you being who you are, you talk about the 7 kids. And I know this next topic isn't easy. I really think it can help some people, though. Would you mind talking a little bit about your book?
Yeah. So I mentioned our oldest is 21, and I will tell you the story that I'll share is a story that dates back or starts 5 years ago. I guess it actually starts much, much earlier, but the history is really about 5 years old. And for 4.5 of the last 5 years, you and I would have a conversation. I would tell you that we've got kids 21 to 2. And then you'd just inherently ask, well, what's up with the 21-year-old? How did she do in high school? Where's she going to college? Is she dating? And I would fill in the gaps. I know where she lives. And so I could tell you what college I thought she went to. And Charles, I didn't want to be vulnerable with you. So, my wife and I'd be sitting with another couple on sort of a first double date, and it wasn't worth the story. It wasn't worth the shame or embarrassment. And actually through a LinkedIn course, a LinkedIn sprint, as I think it was called, that I did about 6 months ago, they gave me a format to post every single day on LinkedIn, and I had to come up with a topic and sort of use their format. One day I looked at it and I realized, well, this is it. This is my opportunity. I need to share this. And so I'm going to actually go back about a year. I was on an airplane. I knew that I had a sort of a calling to write a book. And so I'm writing a book. And I thought, well, I host this podcast on leadership and culture. I'm going to write it all about leadership and culture. And I was on an airplane one day. I was watching a television show that my son has us watching called All American. And the main character, Spencer, had just lost his father. He had just reconnected with his father in episodes earlier. He had just lost his father, I believe, to a battle with cancer, pretty unexpectedly. And as I'm watching the show, Spencer is out on the football field at the end of the first football game that he would have played after his dad passed away. And the coach walks up and says, "Spencer, you doing okay?" And Spencer says, "No, I'm not doing okay." And he says, "What's going on?" He goes, "It's the first football game since my dad died." And the coach puts his arm around him and says, "Spence, you're going to have a year of firsts." And I'm not the most sensitive, emotional guy in the world, but I literally on the airplane broke down and just started weeping because my wife and I had a year of firsts. So it's now been 5 years since we've last spoken with our 21-year-old daughter. And I realized at that moment, I need to write a story. I need to write the journey that we've gone through of of sort of losing her, if you will. She's still here. She lives in New York. We love her and miss her dearly, but she hasn't talked to me or my wife, our kids, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, the whole nine yards. And it's been an awful lot to deal with. And the book is about our journey, and it's about sort of the hell that we went through for the first 4.5 years and how we came out of it. You know, every day is still very, very difficult. But what I found so interesting is I shared that post on LinkedIn, and tens of thousands of people saw that post. It went viral, unlike any other post I've ever written. And it went viral, and I got emails and phone calls, and I had meetings, face-to-face meetings with people that haven't talked to their parents in years, haven't talked to a sibling in years. I got one email that said something to the effect of May 17th, 2019, and I didn't know how to respond to it. So I left it for a couple of days. And about a week later, that person replied to me again and said, that's the last time I spoke to my mom. And somebody listening, I'm going to guess a number of somebodies has gone through this experience. And what we're writing about is how we got through it, and really hoping that others don't go through the shame and embarrassment and the hell that we went through, but really sort of build a bridge for them to get through the emotional strife that we're all going to go through. It's candidly a lot like losing a child. I think the hardest part is that at any moment she could walk through the front door. And so there's still that hope out there. But I'll tell you, interestingly enough, it's taught me to be a better leader, that experience. And I'll bring it back to leadership for a minute, because what I realized is for 4.5 years, I hid that from the world. We didn't talk about it. And I had this epiphany one day writing that, you know what, Charles, you might be going through the same thing. The barista at the coffee shop, they might have lost their mom this morning and had to go to work because they need to pay bills, or they might have just gone to visit their dad. I mean, I had a conversation with a guest recently who had to forgive their father, who he hadn't spoken to in 20 plus years, on his deathbed, and then he had to go work. So every interaction that we have with everybody, even the guy that just cut us off on the way to work, everybody is going through something. And I think we need to remember that in every interaction that we have.
Eric, that's poignant. And I suspected that did impact you, and probably leadership and things related to being a leader. So the title of your book is You Are Enough, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And it'll come out. It's not out yet. It'll come out later this year.
Yeah, I want to definitely, I'm definitely interested, especially now speaking to you. It makes me more interested in wanting to read the book also. And I think, again, I'm interested to see the story and how it has changed you. I like the title that you chose too, because I think that, again, for you, for me, trying to aspire to be leaders. Yeah. And I think for you, and again, for me in our professions, I was actually speaking about this with somebody yesterday about You Are Enough. And it came to about selling yourself in like our professional lives, right? And as leaders, we're always trying to sell ourselves to others. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, how do you sell yourself to yourself?
I think just like you sell yourself to others, I think you have to be authentic. I think the title of the book, You Are Enough, was this epiphany, this moment I realized one day. And listen, there's terrible parents out there. We read about some of them, unfortunately, on the news. My wife and I are not those. We've made mistakes like every other parent ever in the history of the world. But all things considered, we were pretty good parents to our oldest. I think we're pretty good parents to our kids. And I blamed myself, right? You try and find these narratives to justify why certain things are happening. And so the title, You Are Enough, was this realization that as a parent, as a person, as a child to parents, I am enough. And I have done everything that I can to raise her in a in a good way. She's a good kid. She's going through some stuff. But as a parent, I'm enough, and I stopped blaming myself. And my wife, she is enough. And you, as the reader or the listener, you are enough. The thing that I have found that I truly believe has made me successful, if you look at my career and say, wow, that guy's got a good career, is just my desire to be authentic with everybody. And I'm not going to be anybody that I'm not. I'm going to upset some people along the way. I'm going to say things that that don't sit well with others. And it's not because I intend to be hurtful, but it's I am who I am. I'm not going to try and be anybody else. And if you like the genuine Eric, then we're probably going to get along really, really well. And if you don't, that's okay. By trade, historically, I've got a 20 plus year history in sales. And I remember one of my sales guys, Chris, a couple of years ago, we sat on the call. This is a first call with a prospective partner. We sit on the call. Chris had maybe one of his first appointments. And we got off the call, and he picks up the phone and he calls me and he goes, Eric, what the hell was that all about? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, we had an hour with that guy. We had to win him over. All we talked about was dogs and theme parks. I had an hour, Eric. You blew it. And I said, no, I didn't blow it. We had 5 minutes left. And what happened? He says, he asked for another meeting. And I said, he asked for another meeting because he liked us and we liked him. And I was authentically me. He had a picture of a dog behind him, which started the conversation. And I've got 7 kids. I've been to a couple of theme parks over the years, and we had a great time getting to know one another. But I think just you win yourself over, you win over others by just being yourself, being authentic. And in this day and age, I believe wholeheartedly that that's what people want more than anything. And again, you'll lose some people along the way. I've lost a couple people. I could name them. Fortunately, it's a short list as far as I know. But just be yourself, just be authentic, and stand for who you are.
That's a great story about the sales meeting. I was just mentioning this the other day to someone regarding the podcast and relationships. I feel like we're similar because what I had stated to the person was, I said, when it comes to this podcast, I said, the most important time of the podcast is the 5 minutes before I hit record and the 5 minutes after I hit record.
Yep.
I said, I get more out of that as far as the relationship and a bond, so to speak, that a relationship will continue than I could ever gain as the video is recording. So I want to get into that now because I love, you have a video on your website that talks about Counsel Culture, your podcast. And what I love about it is I think as podcast hosts, we're always trying to provide value to people. But I think we have to walk that fine line of people don't always find value in being told how to do something. We also need to be able to find interesting people who have great stories.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that line, Eric, as far as providing value, teaching people, helping people, but also where people want to be interested too. They want to tune in because you have somebody that's interesting.
So I think the thing that surprised me initially, I started a podcast during COVID. I had a microphone and a computer. And as you probably know, that's about all you need to actually get going. There's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of podcasts out there. I'm just one of them. And I thought, well, I've got a decent following on social media. Maybe we'll get a couple listeners. I joke initially, I thought it was just going to be my mom. To my surprise, there are other people that listen. And I've grown a nice following, but I don't think what I find most intriguing is not when a buddy sends me a text, although I'm really honored by that buddy that'll send me a text or a family member that'll send me a text. But when I get an email from someone that signs up for our newsletter, or when I get a text message from a listener that I don't know from some other part of the world that talks about the impact that my guest has had, because I don't think, and I think you operate under the same, the show is not about me. The show is about us, myself included, learning along the way from others. We have had gosh, we've had some really great people. Again, the founder of Reebok, the CEO of Chipotle, the founder of Anytime Fitness, countless New York Times bestsellers, uh, professional athletes, Olympians, the whole nine yards. But they have a tremendous amount to offer. And to me, it's my curiosity. And I believe my curiosity isn't all that different from anybody else's. I love to ask questions that most people want, that I think most people want the answers to, but it's not about just getting the big names. The big names get me the other big names. But I have had Michael Gallagher. You have no idea who Michael Gallagher is. He is a technology industry guy that's probably 3.5, 4 years sober. He hit me up in, gosh, I don't know, July of 2020 and said, I'd like to come on and talk about my addiction and my recovery. And interestingly enough, here's a great story. Interestingly enough, I mean, this part is not, but the next part will be. Interestingly enough, in August, I interviewed him because I had a sister-in-law who was addicted to alcohol and had an 11-year addiction. October, the day the podcast aired, October 27th, she passed away unexpectedly at the age of 31 because of an alcohol addiction. To my surprise, more people have listened to that episode than any other episode I've ever aired, including an acquaintance, a guy I've met maybe 3 times, who sent me a text within a week and said October 27th was my 500th day sober. I woke up and Eric, I was ready to celebrate. I was going to drink. I got out of the shower. I listened to a podcast when I'm getting ready. I put yours on for the first time and I sat in the bathroom and cried because I knew that I needed help. I knew that I needed my wife. He says, I got dressed and I went in the kitchen. I looked at my wife and I said, I need help. I want to drink. And so to me, my curiosity, again, I don't think is any different than anybody else's, but the impact a conversation can have is second to none. Someone hasn't talked to their kid in years. Call me, pick up the phone and text me. But same with the alcohol addiction. Other people are trying to start businesses. So to me, it's not about the big names on the podcast. It's about the impact that those conversations can have.
Yeah, Eric, I feel the same way, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do. And it does. I think it means more to us as hosts that when we find out that message from, I don't mean it wrong, and nobody, right? It's somebody that's not a big name, so to speak,
Yeah.
and they say, "Hey, I like that," or it impacted me. So I'll ask you this: any ideas for the future with the podcast, things like that? Are you thinking of anything to continue to try to impact people?
I want to continue the conversation every time. And I'm sure you've heard this, but 95% of podcasts fail within 10 episodes, meaning the podcast host puts the podcast down 10 episodes or sooner. And so when my buddy Mike Flynn, who hosted a podcast for many, many years, called me to say, hey, I want you to know if you're going to start a podcast. He gave me some great tips, super grateful for the friendship, but he knows me well enough. He said, hey, 95% of people give up within 10 episodes. That to me was the immediate, screw you, Mike, I'm going to do 25 episodes. And we're almost, I guess we've recorded close to 100 episodes. We haven't aired them all, but I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going because I really thoroughly enjoy the response that I get from the listeners that'll email me, text me, send me messages via email or LinkedIn and talk about the impact my guests have had on them in their lives. The books, I read not quite anymore, but I try to read a book a week in preparation for the podcast. I am a better person because I host a podcast because of what it requires me to do to prepare. But I also feel that in some way, the gift that my guests are to those people across the world that choose to listen, I don't feel like I can stop. So we're going to continue to go down the path of leadership and culture as the book towards the tail end of this year or the early part of next year comes out. The fun part about hosting your own podcast is you get to talk about whatever you want. So we're going to spend some time talking about the book with a couple people involved, hopefully my wife included. And we're going to get vulnerable with each other. We're going to get real with one another, because I think that is what this world lacks, is true, genuine authenticity. I'm telling you, if you don't believe me, scroll Instagram for 5 minutes and find someone talking about the fact that they're about to foreclose on their house, or their marriage is falling apart, or the argument that happened with their kids. That stuff doesn't happen on social media, but it definitely happens on real life, and we tackle some of that stuff.
Yeah, and Eric, I've just recently come across you and your podcast, and I wanted to say to you, you've actually impacted me already. I mean, some of the things I've seen you do, style, the way you handle yourself, are things that I will be looking to, hold myself to a bit of a higher standard as far as the podcast goes. So I thank you for that. Lastly, that. No, you're welcome. And thank you. Lastly, just give you a chance. Where can everybody get a hold of you? I'll put some notes in here along with links and things like that, but your time, where can they find Eric?
I'm going to make it easy. First, there's 2 episodes that I think are just game changers on my show. One is with a gentleman named John O'Leary. I'll let you find his story, but he's got an absolutely inspirational journey. The other one is a guy named Andre Norman. Andre Norman wrote a book called Ambassador of Hope, and he literally went from the prison yard with a 114-year sentence to a professor at Harvard, and it is a wildly inspirational conversation. You can find me on my website at ericbrooker.com. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes, but it's ERICBROOKER.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on all the social media platforms. I'm going to do something that one of my guests did about 1.5 years ago. You can also call or text me at 480-296-9777. I enjoy conversations with listeners. If you have any questions, if there's anything I can do to help you or any of your listeners, feel free to reach out.
Eric, that's amazing. And you're now the second person on my show who's just given out his phone number. So I love it. So thank you for that. Well, thanks again, Eric. Everyone, please seek out Eric. It's definitely worth it. He has a lot of great things to offer. So again, I end most of the podcast by saying this: seek out people that inspire you to want to be better. And that is who Eric Brooker is. So thank you, Eric. Thanks, everyone.
This has been the Bear Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.